David Jeremiah for his series, Someone Like You, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
It sounds to me like Donald Trump is talking about building an enemies list.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe.
Do you think that if he goes ahead with this threat to strip these security clearances, an unprecedented action in the United States of America, that would be grounds for impeachment?
This is kind of a petty way of retribution, I suppose, for speaking out against the president.
John Brennan leaked information that almost cost the life of a double agent. He should have been fired for that. I don't think that ex-CIA agents of any stripe who are now talking heads should continue to get classified information. I think it's wrong.
Building an enemies list.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome to a brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Happy to have you in the conversation. Live streaming on Facebook, live streaming on YouTube, listening on the radio, audio streaming at afr.net, using one of our apps for the iPhone, the Android, to listen on the go, catching us on a podcast. However you happen to be with us, we are glad you are in the conversation. Now, I want to look at a passage today in the book of Isaiah, which is where our reading has taken us, which answers the question about why, if God can tell us what's in the future, why doesn't he tell us what's coming? Why do we have to just find out about it when it happens? We know that God knows everything. We've read in Isaiah that he knows the end from the beginning. So if he knows what's coming down the path, he knows what we're facing, he knows what we're heading towards, why doesn't he tell us? Now, sometimes he does, but why doesn't he do that routinely? And that, I think, is what Isaiah is talking about. Now, it tells us who he's talking to in verse 1. He's talking to those who swear by the name of the Lord and confess the God of Israel, but not in truth or right. In other words, what these people are doing essentially is making promises to God with their fingers crossed behind their back. So their mouths are saying all the right things, but their hearts are saying something different than what their mouths are saying, and that's to whom Isaiah is addressing these words. Now, God says to the nation of Isaiah's day, the reason that I told you what I was going to do ahead of time when I gave you prophetic words about what was coming, here's why I did that, so that you wouldn't think that your idols had anything to do with it. That you wouldn't think there was anything, it wasn't coincidence, it wasn't chance, it wasn't anything other than the great I am who did it. I told you I was going to do it, and then I didn't, so you wouldn't think that, and then I did it, so you wouldn't think that anybody else or anything else was responsible. This is what he says in verse 3, the former things I declared of old, they went out from my mouth and announced them, then suddenly I did them, and they came to pass. It says the same thing in verse 5, I declared them, the things that were coming, to you from of old before they came to pass, I announced them to you, lest you should say, my idol did that. So he said he declared these things, and then suddenly he did them. He declared them, days and days and days and days and months and months and months go by, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden, boom, he intervenes in history to fulfill his promise. You know, prayer is a little bit like shopping online. You know, you order something online, and they might even fill that order that day. They might put it in a box. They might wrap it. They might stamp it. It's all ready for the UPS guy to pick it up and start it on its way. And we just have to be patient. We just have to wait patiently until the package actually arrives. So I think it's possible, in fact, I think it's likely that God answers our prayers immediately. He has the answer to that prayer all boxed up and ready to go, but we just must wait patiently until that package actually arrives. And when it gets here, it'll show up suddenly, it'll show up unexpectedly, all of a sudden, right there it is, right in the middle of our lives. Might have even forgotten all about it by the time the answer gets here. Or we waited so long, we got discouraged and thought God was never going to answer our prayer, and so we give up on God, and then one day, boom, it happens. Now, then we find out also in this passage the reason why God does not necessarily tell us what's coming all the time. He does sometimes. We just read about that. He says, because I don't want you to think stuff is happening by accident or by chance or that your idols had anything to do with it. But I think what God says here to us is that the reason I don't tell you everything that is coming is that you would respond to that information in the wrong way. You know, you might start off by showing off, telling people what was going to happen before it did, kind of like Marty McFly going back in time, you know, and betting money on who was going to win the World Series in 1957 when he already knew that kind of stuff. So you might start showing off. You might start getting lazy. Kind of hard not to. If you got a promise that something good is coming, it can be a little hard to work up the enthusiasm to get to work hard today. It says this in verse 6, "From this time forth I announce to you new things, hidden things that you have not known. They are created now, not long ago. Before today you had never heard of them, lest you should say, behold, I knew them. For I knew that you would surely deal treacherously. From before birth you were called a rebel." So God says, look, there's one simple reason why I don't tell you everything that I'm about to do. You know, number one, God says, I like to surprise you with stuff. That's fun for me. You know, Deb started stocking some popsicles in the freezer out in the garage, and sometimes when we were first starting out, we'd kind of forget about the fact they were out there. I would go out in the freezer, and I would get her favorite color of popsicle. I would come in the house, and I would put that popsicle behind my back, and I'd walk into the family room, and I would say what we used to say with our kids: hold out your hands and close your eyes, and I'll give you something to make you wise. And she'd just get this big smile on her face. I love that smile. And then I'd whip out that popsicle from behind my back and give it to her. So God likes to do that. He likes to surprise us with stuff. And if he tells us it's coming, it's not as much of a surprise. But I think the main reason that he doesn't tell ahead of time is that he cannot trust us with that information because of our fallenness. We'll start misusing that information almost immediately. He says this in verse 4, "I know that you are obstinate. Your neck is an iron sinew, and your forehead is brass." So each of us, by birth, is stubborn. Each of us has a hard head and a hard heart. So how does God break down that stubbornness in our hearts and the hardness in our heads? And what Isaiah says, he burns it out through adversity. He says in verse 10, "Behold, I have refined you. I have tried you," literally, I have chosen you in the furnace of affliction. So he's talking about the process of refining precious metals, and you know how this works. You know, kind of in olden times, you just get a big crucible. You'd put the ore in there with all of its impurities, and you'd heat that fire. And the hotter it got and the hotter it got, the more the impurities would rise to the surface where they could be scooped off and they could be gotten rid of. And God says, I've done this over and over and over again. In other words, God has to repeatedly use the furnace of affliction to purify us, and he's not going to quit until he can see his own reflection in the furnace. Well, let's go to prayer. Lord God, we worship you this day as the one who is the first and the last. Your own hand laid the foundation of the earth. Your right hand spread out the heavens. I pray this day that you will teach us what is best for us and lead us in the way we should go. Pray for our nation this day. We freely confess, Lord, that we have been an obstinate nation. Please purify us for your glory. Amen.
What if I told you that you could clean your family's laundry and help reach the next generation at the same time? That opportunity is here through a company called Redeem Clean. Every time you use Redeem Clean products, you help support the ministry of the American Family Association. In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean laundry detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made in the USA. And they were developed exclusively for the support of the American Family Association. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and order Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. In an interview with the far-left outfit Democracy Now!, Democrat candidate for New York's 14th District congressional seat and soon-to-be Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez lamented the fact that people are disappointed when candidates like her don't have fully formed opinions or otherwise understand the issues they discuss publicly. She said this after being unable to articulate a cogent position on Middle East policy concerning Israel. It would almost be funny if she wasn't headed to Washington, D.C. to deliberate and vote on pretty important issues like the federal budget and stuff like that.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Looking at a story I just cleared. Again, this is about Islam, and I refer to Islam, as you know, as the Ebola virus of culture. Oh, one programming note before we get into content, just a reminder that on August 6th, Monday, August 6th, this program will be shortened to 1 hour. We will be on from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., and then at 2 p.m. on this network, Stacy Washington, her program is Stacy on the Right. She will be with us from 2 to 3. She'll also be available for a second hour. She's got 2 hours on our networks, 1 hour on this talk network and another hour on the Urban Network that follows right after her 1 hour on this network. So you can catch her for 2 hours by switching over to the Urban Network for the second hour. So that'll all start on August the 6th. And, there's a reason why I refer to Islam as the Ebola virus of culture. I've got a number of stories in the stack that kind of illustrate that. There was a shooting rampage in Toronto yesterday. The gunman now has finally been identified. He's Faisal Hussein of Toronto. Could have seen that one coming a mile away. He killed 2 people. He injured 13 others in a lively Toronto neighborhood on Sunday night. So families are out there together. They're enjoying Sunday evening before the work week starts. And he rained on their party by shooting everybody up. His family said when his identity was released, he'd been struggling with psychosis and depression his entire life. Well, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, anybody that is involved in the devout pursuit of Islam has got a mental psychosis. I mean, Islam itself, if someone is following Islam, that is a mental disorder. They're thinking about life. They're thinking about God. They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about other people. Is completely off kilter. It's completely out of key. It's a form of mental psychosis just to persuade yourself that you can follow a religion such as Islam. Now, that brings me to an issue, and I've got a column up on, well, it'll be up soon if it's not there. Could you check, Jeff, and see if the column is up there? And it's a column on something I touched on not too long ago, but the trend of Muslims running for office. And again, you're not going to hear too much about this kind of thing on very many other programs because there's just like a blackout. Say anything that is remotely critical or could be construed as critical of Islam, you just get descended on by the PC police and accused of being a bigot and a hater and an Islamophobe and all that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is not Islamophobia. This is Islamo-realism, and I think it's a concern that we all need to share about where our country is headed. And having elections is no guarantee. It's great to be able to choose our own leaders, but that's no guarantee that we're going to make good choices. If the people are ignorant, if the people are deceived, if the people are misled, then they can make perfectly horrible choices at the ballot box. Adolf Hitler was voted into office by the German people in 1933. That's a vote they'd like to have over, but you got to live life forward. Can't live it in reverse. Now, the trend that I'm concerned about is this trend of Muslims running for office. According to The Hill, and I've read this on the Associated Press, a couple of other outlets, a record number of Muslims today are running for public office. The Hill's calculations indicate that as many as 90 followers of Allah pursued statewide or nationwide positions in 2018. That's the most since 9/11, and this is more than 7 times the number of Muslim candidates just 2 years ago. Now, there are 9 Muslim congressional candidates who are still alive electorally. They still could win a seat in Congress. Right now, there's only 2 that are in Congress who are Muslims, Andre Carson from Indiana and Keith Ellison from Minnesota. Keith Ellison is running for Attorney General position in Minnesota, so he's dropping out of Congress. Now, there are 18 other Muslims who are running for positions in their state legislatures, and there are another 10 that are running either for major statewide or for local offices, including this Abdul El Sayed running for governor in Michigan, which has perhaps the largest Muslim component of its population of any state in the union. Now, what I'm suggesting in my column today, that this trend is an alarming trend, it is a dangerous trend, and it is a trend that I believe must be stopped in the interest of national security and national cohesion. And I will tell you what will happen if we do not stop this. 10 years from now, people are going to be coming to me and said, "Man, Brian, I wish we'd listened to you. I thought you were a cuckoo clock in 2018 when you were talking about we got to stop this thing before it gets out of hand. Now I see that you're right, and now it's too late." So that's what's going to happen. People are going to come up to me and anybody else ringing the alarm bell saying, "Look, we should have listened to you." Well, now's the time to listen. Now's the time to act. Now, in Michigan, you've got 7 Muslims that are on the August 7 primary ballot in Michigan alone, and that includes the Democrat Abdul El Sayed, who's running to become the first Muslim governor in America. Now, El Sayed, the problem with El Sayed is that he has a well-established connection with the Muslim Brotherhood. He was the vice president of the Muslim Student Association at the University of Michigan. Now, the Muslim Student Association, the MSA, is one of the branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. They've got 29 organizations that operate under the Muslim Brotherhood umbrella. So if you don't know, you don't realize you're dealing with a radical Islamic organization that believes in jihad to promote and advance Islam. So you've got CARE, that's the Council on American Islamic Relations. That's a brotherhood group. They're a terrorist group. Muslim Brotherhood, that's a terrorist group, and they're the overarching group for all of these subgroups. You have the Islamic Society of North America. That's a radical Muslim Brotherhood group. And you can go on and on. They got 29 affiliated organizations. The MSA, Muslim Student Association, that's a Muslim Brotherhood group. And here they are on hundreds and hundreds of college campuses. Perfect opportunity to recruit young Muslim males into jihad to advance the cause of Allah. So El Said was the vice president of the Muslim Student Association at Michigan. You know what the slogan of the Muslim Brotherhood is? This is their official slogan. Allah is our objective. The Quran is the Constitution. The Prophet is our leader. Jihad is our way. And death for the sake of Allah is our wish. So this is the heartbeat of the guy who wants to be governor of Michigan. His slogan, thing that animates him as a devout Muslim, and he's talked about the fact that he's a devout Muslim. He's making no bones about the fact that he's a sincerely devoted follower of Muhammad. Allah is his objective, not the true and living God. The Quran is the Constitution, elevates the Quran above the Constitution. So his Constitution, his supreme guide, is the Quran in public office, not the Constitution. Now, we elevate the Bible over the Constitution, but that's fine because the Constitution was rooted and grounded and shaped and formed by the Bible. All of the founders, the drafters of the Constitution, were believers in the Bible as the Word of God. We've illustrated that numerous times. But for this would-be mayor of Michigan, the prophet is his leader, not the true and living God, not Jesus Christ, but the prophet. Jihad is the way. Jihad is the use of violence to advance Islam. That's the way of the Muslim Brotherhood. So his way is the way of violence in the name of Allah, and death for the sake of Allah is our wish. These folks actually want to die as martyrs in the cause of Allah. Now, even worse, and we're going to continue this discussion through the break here on the other side, in a Holy Land, in a terrorist case in 2007, the Holy Land Foundation case that was identified as a terrorist group. And when you hear Muslims being involved in charity, do not believe it. Don't believe one word of it. Their charities exist for the purpose of raising money for jihad, period. Now, they'll try to pretend that they're doing good deeds and doing good works out there in the community, just a smokescreen. Every dollar that's given to a Muslim charity goes right into the coffers of terrorist groups and organizations and individuals. Now, in the process of pursuing this Holy Land Foundation terrorism case, largest one in history, and again, this was all about the fact the Holy Land Foundation is supposed to be a charitable organization. They found out it wasn't. They were channeling money to Hamas and other jihadist groups, and so that's why they had to investigate them. The largest charitable foundation fraud case in history. CARE was a part of that. Muslim Student Association was a part of that. They were unindicted conspirators, meaning the federal government had enough evidence to indict them, but they had bigger fish that they wanted to fry, so they said, we'll get after you guys at a later date. But don't think we don't have enough to prosecute you right now, because we do. Now, here's what this explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group, that's the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. So they're explaining what their general strategic goal is in North America. This is why we're here. This is what we want to accomplish. This is our written statement of purpose. This is our goal. You know, American Family Association, we've got a mission statement too, and that is to encourage and to equip and to mobilize followers of Jesus Christ to reclaim this culture for Christ. That is our mission statement, and that's what we pursue every day on this platform and every other platform we have here at AFA. Well, here is the mission statement for the Muslim Brotherhood. The brothers must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad listen to this, in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believer so that it is eliminated and God's religion is victorious over all other religions.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. This past Sunday, I had the privilege of preaching at a church here in Charlotte, and my message was based on the second chapter of Colossians, where the Apostle Paul tells the Colossian Christians in verses 6 and 7 of the second chapter, "Therefore, as you received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him, established in the faith as you have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving." We received him by faith alone, in Christ alone. Yet sometimes it's a temptation for us to not walk in faith, but to walk too much by sight. We get like the Apostle Peter, who could walk on the water when he was looking at Jesus, but when he took his eyes off Jesus, he began to sink. We're to walk daily in the Lord the same way we received him as Savior, by faith, not by sight. And verse 7 gives us a clue as to how we are to do this. It says that we are rooted in him and built up in him and established in the faith as we have been taught. Now, I want you to notice we're rooted as trees, we're built up as a building, we're established by him in the faith, and we're taught by him. All four of those verbs, we are the object. He is the subject. He's acting upon us. It is in his strength, his foundation, his teaching, his establishing us that we are able to walk by faith. It's not until we get to the last verb that we have the active voice, abounding therein with thanksgiving. We are to be constantly giving thanksgiving to God as we walk in the faith, because he's the one who's rooted us and founded us in the faith, has built us up in the faith, has established us in the faith, and has taught us what we need to know to walk in faith. So we're to depend upon him for our salvation and depend upon him for our daily walk. For more information about Southern Evangelical Seminary, go to ses.edu. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. We've been talking here about the number of Muslims, record number of Muslims, running for public office. And I'm arguing that that is a really, really bad idea. Here's a story, by the way, from Denmark. Danish prosecutors on Tuesday, this is in Europe now, charged an imam with calling for the killing of Jews. In the first case of its kind in the Nordic nation, it sparked political outrage. You wonder, what is it going to take to light these people up? You know, what is it going to take to get their attention? Well, apparently this got the attention of people in Denmark. This imam preaches in a Copenhagen. Yeah. That's how they say it, isn't it? Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Copenhagen. Anyways, in Copenhagen neighborhood at a mosque there. And he has been, and this mosque has been linked to radical Islam. And this is what the guy said on a Facebook and YouTube video post. Judgment Day will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. Now think about it. If this gets into the mindset of the average Muslim, Judgment Day's not going to come until I start killing Jews. You know, as Christians, what do we believe? We believe that if we want the day of judgment to come, we want the second coming of Christ to come, what is our job? It's to evangelize. It's to persuade more and more people to become followers of Jesus Christ. That's how we, according to 1 Peter, hasten the day of his coming. But it's official Islamic theology. The way you hasten Judgment Day is you got to go out there and kill yourself some Jews. So they're prosecuting this guy. It's the first prosecution of this kind in Denmark. So that's going on in Denmark, another indication that this is, Islam is not a benign alternative to Christianity. It's lethal. It's the Ebola virus of culture. Everywhere it goes, it leaves behind a trail of unrest, violence, war, and death. It's not a religion of peace. It's a religion of war and violence and death. And we have 1,400 years of proof. We've been able to watch this religion for 1,400 years. Everywhere it goes, it leaves behind a trail of destruction and death and slavery. Remember David Livingstone. He's in Africa. He's living there. And he's noticing all of these vultures just flying in circles. I mean, like they're following a path. And what he discovered is the path that they were following was a path of all the African slaves that were being marched from the interior of Africa to the coast where they could be sold to slave traders. And they had been kidnapped into the slave trade and were being marched to the slave ships by Muslims. Muslims kidnapped, by William Federer's estimate 180 million slaves. 180 million Africans and even Europe, over 1 million Europeans were subjected to Islamic slavery. And what they would do is they would chain these slaves together and they'd march them to, and some of them would just pass out or die on the road. They just leave them by the side of the road. They'd pass out because they were thirsty. They just kick them to the side of the road, and pretty soon the vultures just had basically one giant long buffet from the middle of Africa all the way to the Mediterranean coast. So anyway, we discover that the Muslim Brotherhood, that their entire goal is to eliminate and destroy Western civilization. I mean, that's all you need to know about Islam. That's all you need to know about the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the most predominant Muslim organization in America. All you need to know is that their sacred goal is to eliminate and destroy Western civilization. And they want to do it from within. It's like they want to be just like termites that are there, that are eating away at the very foundational timbers of this culture, so it eventually collapses of its own weight. And they want to sabotage, that's their word. Sabotage is when you try to conceal what you're doing. You try to hide what you're doing by calling it a religion of peace, by claiming you do charitable works all over wherever. That's just deception on their part. That's sabotage. Get themselves in position where they can do damage to this country and nobody knows what they're up to. They call our house a miserable house, and they're going to sabotage it by our own hands. That's their goal. Sabotage its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers. That's us, they're saying. We're the Muslim Brotherhood. That's us. We're the believers. We're going to be a part of this, but we are going to use them. We are going to use the naive. We're going to use the gullible Americans. We're going to use the gullible types like John Brennan, who converted to Islam when he was in Iran as a member of the CIA, became the leader of the CIA as a Muslim convert. We're going to use people like that are just dupes. They're just saps. Well, we're going to deceive them. We're going to fool them. We're going to find a subtle way of enlisting them in our cause, and then they will help pull the House of America right down on their own heads. And their goal, see, is global. They want to eliminate Western civilization so that God's religion, Allah's religion, is made victorious over all other religions. Who would that include? That includes us. So they want America to be a place, North America, to be a place where God's religion is made victorious over Christianity. You know, they don't want religious freedom. They want religious domination. That's the difference. You know, in Christianity, we believe in religious liberty. I believe to a fault, actually. We believe in religious liberty beyond what the Constitution provides and guarantees, and we're chumps for doing it. We're sort of participating in our own demise. And we want Christianity to be the superior religion of North America and the entire world. But how do we do it? We do it through persuasion and prayer and relationship and love, persuading people to become followers of Jesus Christ. Muslims do it at the point of a sword. You have no choice. You either repent and pay a tax or you die. Those are the only choices that Islam gives you. So you can convert or you can submit by paying a tax, basically just extortion money, kind of money the mob used to collect so they wouldn't trash your drugstore or your whatever, your hardware store. So those are the only choices. 3 choices that Christians are given in the West is convert, submit, or die. You don't convert, you don't pay the jizya tax. Your only third alternative is we're going to cut your head off. That's Islam, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not exaggerating anything. And I'm just trying to make sure that we, at least in this listening audience, we're educated. We know, we understand. You're going to find almost no people in America that are educated about the dangers of Islam. You know, we as Christians and Jews, we would be second-class citizens under Sharia law, which is where they want to go. You know, and realize that there's no single First Amendment right that is honored in the Quran or in Sharia law. There's no freedom of religion under Islam. Did you know in Saudi Arabia there's not one single house of worship, not one single solitary church anywhere in the country of Saudi Arabia? You don't have freedom of the speech or freedom of speech or freedom of press. You try to publish a criticism of Muhammad or Islam. You try to give a speech criticizing Muhammad or Islam, you'll find yourself in jail so fast it'll give you a nosebleed. There's no freedom of assembly, which we enjoy here in the United States. Our Constitution says as long as you're gathering for a peaceful purpose, anybody can meet anywhere at any time where they have, permission from the owner or whatever. You can do it. We believe in peaceable assembly. The only reason you can't do that, we don't honor as if your purposes are not peaceable. Then we're going to intervene and stop you from gathering for that purpose. But as long as it's a peaceable assembly, we're going to leave you alone. But Islam doesn't believe in that. They don't allow home Bible studies. I mean, even a home Bible study in Saudi Arabia will get you a long jail term. And there, of course, is obviously no freedom to petition the government for the redress of grievances. So we and Jews, Christians and Jews, we're officially second-class citizens under Sharia. The only way we get to live is if we pay a jizya. That's what they call it. That's the submission tax. Otherwise, it's off with our heads. Women have no rights under Sharia. Husbands are even directed in the Holy Book of Islam to beat their wives if they won't obey them. Beat them into submission. That's what the Quran teaches about marriage. Now, I would submit to you that there is simply no room in our political life for people who hold such radical and fundamentally subversive anti-American views. This is why, by the way, the Communist Party is still to this day illegal in the United States. It was made illegal in a 1954 law, and it was made illegal because of its totalitarian worldview, because of its subversive worldview, because of its anti-American worldview. We made it illegal. I mean, that's not Communist Party tickets still appear on ballots. They shouldn't even be there. That's not legal for them to even run for office or be a political party, but we let them get away with all kind of stuff because we're just not paying attention. Now, I would say that Islam certainly qualifies for the same treatment, for the same reason. If we can ban totalitarian ideologies because they're subversive, because they are anti-American, because their principles are contrary to the ideals of the Constitution, we can do it. We did it with the Communist Party in 1954. We can do it with Islam for exactly the same reason in 2018. So the question is, what can be done to stop this scourge? Now, there's one step, of course, that we can take, and that's to educate every Christian in America so he wouldn't even think about voting for somebody who is a follower of this religion and who would carry this ideology into office. You know, I'm not going to vote for a liberal, and I'm never going to vote for a Muslim. He may be a perfectly nice guy. He might make a great neighbor. But what I know about him, somewhere deep down in his heart, he believes that Islam ought to be in charge of the world. It ought to be in conflict with Christianity until Christianity is subdued. I do not want people like that anywhere near the levers of power in my country. Now, there's another step that we can take, and I'll finish this up after the break. But the other step that we can take is for states to establish a religious test for public office. For the states to establish a religious test for public office. Now, you're out there and you're listening to me say, that's unconstitutional, Brian. You can't do that. That is contrary to the Constitution. You can't have a religious test for public office. I'll tell you why you're wrong to say that and why I'm right when we come back after the break. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Be right back. Stay with us.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Announcing 3 new episodes of Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent. These animated half-hour episodes will entertain children.
That's right!
And teach lessons about joy, patience, and the dangers of selfishness. Ryan DeFrady's is a secret agent with a whole lot to learn, and he insists on working alone until he's paired with a very unlikely partner.
Mommy!
Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent, episodes 4, 5, and 6 from American Family Studios are available now at afastore.net.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for a healthcare plan, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called Medi-Share. Medi-Share is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, Medi-Share members have shared more than $2.5 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with Medi-Share. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings may be less or more, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join Medi-Share anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. Just hit *345. That's *345. *345.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Talking before the break about how we can stop this scourge of Muslims running for and holding office in the United States. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, believe me when I tell you, if we do not get this under control soon, we are going to rue the day when we heard people saying we got to do something about that and we didn't do it. And then it'll be too late. You know, once Muslims begin to take control, and we went over the statistics a week ago or so about what they do as their percentage of a population increases, they become more and more demanding, and eventually they get to the point where they just take over. Now, right now, we have about 1% of our population is Muslim. So we're in a situation where we still can control this thing. We can still contain this thing. We can keep this virus contained, but we have to go to work to get that done. By the way, just one other thing, one other programming note. People have had this question about whether health is playing any part in this reduction of focal point to 1 hour. And I just want to let you know, praise God, my cancer is in remission. It has been in remission now for over a year. Just had a test just about 3 weeks ago that confirmed that the cancer is still in remission. No trace of it. It's undetectable. My nerve's still regenerating. But anyway, this is not a health issue. It's a programming decision. So just wanted to put your minds at rest about how my health is doing. I'm continuing. I'm cancer-free, and the nerves are continuing to regenerate. Now, let's go to how we can stop this scourge of Muslims running for office. And I'm suggesting this is the most effective way to do it. Are we going to get anybody to do it? I'm willing to bet we won't. My point is, here is a solution that's available. It's available today. State governments could implement this protective device today. They could do it this afternoon. It's perfectly constitutional, and that is to establish a religious test for public office. Now, some of you are out there saying, no, Brian, you can't do that. You know better than that. You know that a religious test for public office is contrary to the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. Let me read to you the actual words of the Constitution. This is from Article 6. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. When you see United States in the Constitution, that is a reference to the federal government. It's a reference to the central government. So what the Constitution prohibits is any kind of a test for federal office. You cannot have a religious test for federal office. That's for federal office. But the states, and listen to me because this is important, this is the solution, ladies and gentlemen. I doubt that we're going to use it. And, you know, the day will come and we said, man, I wish I'd listened to those people that said the states can do this and it's perfectly constitutional. And that is that states have always, since the beginning of the Republic, been able to impose any kind of religious test they want for public office. I want to give you an example of some of the religious tests that were in place at the time of the founding. All of these were after the Declaration of Independence, and these were all in place at the time that the Constitution was ratified. These religious tests were still in place. Now, some of these states did amend the parts of their Constitution that dealt with religious tests, and many of them did away with religious tests. They copied the federal Constitution in that regard. Others did not. There are still about 8 states in America that have a religious test. Now, let me give an example of some of the religious tests that were in place at the time of the founding, which tells you where the founding generation was when it came to Christianity and public policy. Here was the rule in Massachusetts before you could take your seat in the Massachusetts legislature. Remember, this is John Adams. This is Thomas Jefferson. Well, he was Virginia. Sorry, strike that. James Madison was Virginia. I don't know what I was talking about. Forget what I said about Madison and Jefferson. They were Virginia. But Massachusetts, you know, considered a bastion of political whatever, and a lot of the major events in the Revolutionary War period, the Battle for Independence, were connected to Massachusetts, centered in Massachusetts, Battle of Bunker Hill and all that kind of stuff. Now, here's what you had to do in Massachusetts. This was the Massachusetts State Constitution, 1780. You had to say this: I do declare that I believe the Christian religion. So if you wanted to be a legislator in Massachusetts, you had to declare on oath that you believed in the Christian religion. Here's the state of Maryland. From their state constitution, 1776, you must issue a declaration of belief in the Christian religion. Here's Delaware, 1776. I do profess faith. Listen to this. Listen to what you had to profess publicly on oath to be able to vote on legislation in Delaware. I do profess faith in God the Father and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore, and I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures of the Old Testament and the New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. And that sounds like what you got to do to become a member of your church. That's what you had to do to become a member of the Delaware State Legislature. This is New Hampshire. If you were going to be in the Senate, no person shall be capable of being elected a senator who is not of the Protestant religion. Same thing in the House. You have to be of the Protestant religion. And the same for the office of president, like would be governor today. He shall be of the Protestant religion. In Georgia, representatives shall be of the Protestant religion. Here's North Carolina. No person who shall deny the being of God or the truth of the Protestant religion or the divine authority of the Old or New Testaments, or who shall hold religious principles incompatible with the freedom and safety of the state, shall be capable of holding any office or place of trust within this state. So you had to believe that God exists, you had to believe the truth of the Protestant faith, and you had to believe the divine authority of Old and New Testament. Same thing in Pennsylvania. You had to believe in one God, the creator and governor of the universe. You had to believe that he's a rewarder of the good and a punisher of the wicked. And you had to affirm the scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. So you get the point. You know, in New Jersey, you had to be a follower of any Protestant sect. So it didn't matter what form of Protestant you were. You just had to be a part of the Protestant denomination in New Jersey. Now, again, realize that some of these things changed over time. The point, what I'm trying to illustrate here, is the viewpoint of the founders when it came to Christianity and their state constitutions. They were perfectly free to establish any religious test that they felt led to do it. So anyway, this can be done. You know, as I mentioned, some states have changed their constitutions to ban religious tests at the state level. But the ones that haven't done that, they're in a position right now to do something about this issue today. So the contagion of Islam, the Ebola virus of culture, it must be stopped, and it must be stopped now before the United States turns into Europe. The Constitution shows us how it can be done. My closing question is, which state will be the first to lead the way? All right, so that is my lengthy discourse on religion, Islam, and the ballot box. Getting behind on my segment titles here. But let me give you one more example. This is in Sweden. When I talk about before we become Sweden, Sweden has now become the rape capital of the world because of Muslim migration. Germany's not far behind. Now, here is an article from ZeroHedge.com. The Swedish government, get this, is going to pump $564,000 into migrant sex courses. This is according to the news outlet Fria Tider. And what they need to do is inform immigrants about what is what in Sweden, because they don't know. Now, what they're dealing with here in Sweden is rampant reports of sexual assault in the last several years. Rape was up 10% across the country in 2017. So Germany did a similar thing in 2016 because they were getting overrun. You know, in Germany, they had to hand out swimming pool etiquette guides because you had reports of dozens of women being groped by migrants, and I'll tell you why that happens, by the way. And they had to wind up banning men from some of the public swimming pools. Just banned them. So they were swimming pools. The only people who could use them in the community were women because the Muslim males were taking advantage of the women that were there. And they had to close other swimming pools down altogether.
By the way, Brian, your column just got posted. So if people want to go to afa.net, it is now up there. It's a lot of information in there, and I think people really want to see this. I'm also going to post it on your Facebook page and Twitter handle as well.
Okay, good enough. Okay. So it's up at the Facebook page. If you want to read the column on what needs to be done about this dangerous trend of Muslims running for office, then you can find it at afa.net. You can also find it on our Facebook page. Be able to find it on my personal Facebook page if you happen to be a friend or a follower. But here's the reason why they have to do this with these swimming pools in Muslim and why there are so many sexual assaults. Because remember, Muslims believe that a woman should be shrouded from head to toe. Why is that? Because what they're taught in their faith is that if a woman is exposing any part of her body, she is signaling that she is ready for sexual activity. So if she exposes so much as an arm, or she exposes a leg because of a short skirt, she is telling you that she's available for sexual activity. Well, that's it for the first hour of Focal Point. We will be back with a second hour right after the news. Stay with us. Again, the column is up at afa.net, a dangerous trend of Muslims running for office.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
1milliondads.com is where men can learn and grow together as men of the cross. Close families and even national revival begin at home with strong fathers in the faith. Go to the website, read the articles. You're not alone. 1milliondads.com. Lead, or others will.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Israel shot down a Syrian fighter jet it said infiltrated its airspace today as Syrian forces reached the Golan Heights frontier for the first time in 7 years. Connor Powell is in Jerusalem.
The Assad regime and Russia have consolidated territory around Syria the last few months. The one area they've avoided until recently was their southern border along with Israel. But we've seen increased government presence and fighting there in the last couple weeks. And that fighting there is beginning to spill over into Israel. A Syrian jet, according to the Israeli government, crossed about 2 kilometers into Israeli airspace. And Israel fired 2 Patriot missiles in response. And they say they hit that jet and that it's now crashed back in Syrian territory.
A member of the Senate Armed Services Committee says President Trump made the right move by taking a much tougher stance against Iran than his predecessor. More from Chad Groening.
In a battle of wills, the president sent a stern warning to Iran that he is not going to tolerate critical rhetoric from the rogue regime. He tweeted in all caps, "Never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before." He was responding to Iranian President Hassan Rouhani's comments that, quote, "America must understand well that peace with Iran is the mother of all peace, and war with Iran is the mother of all wars." Mississippi Republican Senator Roger Wicker serves on the Armed Services Committee.
I was opposed to the Iranian deal when President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry entered into it, and I think the president is correct to withdraw from the deal because it really isn't a good deal, and also to reimpose the sanctions.
And Wicker is glad that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has pointed out what a thuggish regime runs Iran.
The corruption is rampant in Iran. They're stealing from the people in Iran. I think that the Iranian people would like to have good relations with the United States. And so if we can continue to sanction their leader, it may be that the regime would fall and the people of Iran would rise up and have a more representative government that could be friendly with the rest of the world. But right now, Iran is a big threat.
I'm Chad Groening.
Israel and the U.S. have common ground in an area that is usually not talked about.
Sandy Shoshani is a Messianic Jew and national director of Beyond Chaim, a pro-life pregnancy center in Israel. She was a recent guest on Pastor Joseph Parker's Hour of Intercession on AFR's Urban Family Talk, and says abortion is just a way of life in Israel, and the government pays for it. A female soldier who becomes pregnant can get abortions free twice while in the military.
I've met a lot of people who visited Israel and thought that we were the Holy Land. In a sense, we are the Holy Land because God has appointed us to live in our nation and brought us back after 2,000 years. So we are holy unto Him. But the people of Israel, as a people, like any other people, most of the Israelis are secular. And abortion is pretty much a non-issue in Israel today.
In fact, the nation's law says a baby is not considered a human being until the head emerges and the umbilical cord is cut. Shoshani says there is an additional question of sin.
The responsibility of that sin is on that individual and, I believe, on her partner. But when a nation is paying for the abortions, the responsibility of those abortions is also on the nation. The sin is on the hands of the nation, not only an individual woman.
God has turned on Israel before because of sin. There have been 2 million abortions there since the 1940s. In America, about 60 million babies have been aborted, and that sin is upon the nation as well. I'm Charlie Butt.
Some parts of the nation will break heat records, while others will receive wet weather.
Excessive heat warnings and heat advisories stretch from the desert southwest through California and up towards the Pacific Northwest. Many record highs will be possible across Arizona and Southern California through Thursday. Meanwhile, excessive rainfall and flooding is likely over the East Coast from Florida to Maine as tropical moisture surges northward. Flood watches and warnings are up for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. I'm Janice Dean, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Who is God? What's He like?
How can we know? Your answer to these questions will impact your worship, discipleship, apologetics, and evangelism. Learn from Ravi Zacharias, Josh McDowell, Chip Ingram, and more than 60 other speakers at Southern Evangelical Seminary's 25th Annual National Conference on Christian Apologetics. It's October 12th and 13th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Get the early bird discount when you register by August 1st at ses.edu.
Len Ingram of Redeem Clean felt God call him to support the American Family Association.
I'm a laundryman. I'm the son of a laundryman, too. I love clean clothes. I love the business. I love everything about it. This project was built exclusively to support AFA and AFR. There's no strings attached. Another thing that I would like to see come out of this is that I would like to see other business people feel a calling to support ministries wherever and whatever they do to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean Laundry Detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and get Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
This is Frank Gaffney with the Secure Freedom Minute. Critics of President Trump's decision to withdraw from the appallingly bad Obama bomb deal with Iran often insisted that there was no Plan B. In recent days, the reality and potential impact of an actual Trump alternative to underwriting and otherwise legitimating the Ayatollah's nuclear ambitions are coming into focus. The President and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have taken turns denouncing the corrupt, Sharia supremacist regime in Tehran in the strongest possible terms. They have warned against any Iranian warlike action, and they are intensifying sanctions that have contributed to the collapse of Iran's currency and growing opposition to the mullahs. Instead of appeasing, enriching, and enabling the danger posed by our Iranian enemies, Donald Trump is taking steps to put them out of business. He deserves credit for devising and executing a Plan B for ending the threat from Iran. This is Frank Gaffney.
It sounds to me like Donald Trump is talking about building an enemies list.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe.
Do you think that if he goes ahead with this threat to strip these security clearances, an unprecedented action in the United States of America, that would be grounds for impeachment?
This is kind of a petty way of retribution, I suppose, for speaking out against the president.
John Brennan leaked information that almost cost the life of a double agent. He should have been fired for that. I don't think that ex-CIA agents of any stripe who are now talking heads should continue to get classified information. I think it's wrong.
Building an enemies list.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. What am I? Congenial, convivial, and amiable as always.
Sometimes effervescent.
Sometimes effervescent.
Yeah. Sometimes more than others.
Sometimes more than others, as my team can testify. Jeff's seen me on the golf course.
Oh, yeah.
When I have not been effervescent, I will flat out guarantee you there are times when the bubbles are gone.
Yeah, there's
vanished into the atmosphere.
There's never been any bad language, but there are some definite grunts and noises that
and have been
expressed quite well.
There's been some definite bad shots. No bad language, but bad shots.
A few to pick from here and there.
Ryan, you forget we played together once too.
So, that's we did.
And I did hear a arg a few times.
Actually, I have seen you play some shots that were in terrible lies. And you do great with those. You always seem to really do amazing with the worst lies that you have. It's the normal shots.
Yeah, which is most of them. So let's be honest here. So. Okay. So anyway, effervescent today, feeling good today. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Ethanol-free, nothing but high-octane fuel here. And you are listening to the American Family Radio Network. Again, a programming note. I want to make sure everybody understands this. I don't want anybody to be surprised at what happened. And you got to say things at different times because people aren't listening for the whole 2 hours. Shame on you if you don't. But I understand that people have to work. They've got jobs and stuff like that. But anyway, 2 weeks from this week, starting on August 6th, that'll be on Monday, you'll be listening to Stacy Washington in this hour on American Family Radio. She'll be taking the second hour of this program. My program will be trimmed back to 1 hour. I'll still be on from 1 to 2 every day. That's Central Time. And then Stacy will take over in that second hour. You know, and again, it's not a health issue. I'm pleased to report that. I appreciate the concern. A lot of people wondering if maybe it had to do with some kind of declining health on my part. I'm happy to report that it is not, so you can put your concerns to rest on that. Now, let's turn our attention to FBI stuff and to, let's do this to start with. Jeff and I have a mutual friend. His name is Rex Harson. You've known Rex for longer than I have. Yeah. And Rob, I think you know Rex, don't you? Anyway, he's a local filmmaker. This will be clip R1. And Rex has completed filming a documentary. And I'm trying to remember the name of this. This documentary, it's Breaking Guns or Beating Guns. I think I know what it is. I know what it is.
Beating guns because they're beating guns
into plowshares, that kind of deal. From that verse in Isaiah, beating their whatever into plowshares, swords into plowshares, or whatever. So that's so it's obviously an anti-gun documentary. Beating guns.
Yes.
And I don't know when this thing is going to be available or what format it'll be available. When I talked to Rex, he said that they might be shooting for like a Netflix or an Amazon Prime kind of a deal. Because
he does quality work. I mean, his stuff is really good.
He's a good filmmaker. So this is all about the need to ban guns. Guns are bad. Guns are terrible. But he did have me on to provide sort of a Christian alternative, a view from a biblical standpoint of self-defense, which I did. I'm kicking myself. Well, let's listen to it, and then I'll tell you what I'm kicking myself. Here's about a little over a minute of my part in the documentary. I don't know if this is the only part of me they're going to have in this documentary. We talked for quite a while. You know, documentary, they got to trim way down, so I have no idea how much of my material will actually survive the cutting floor. But anyway, here's just a small portion of that documentary, or at least what I contributed to the documentary. Let's listen.
Well, I think we need to remember that guns are just tools. You know, guns don't kill people. People do. That's a cliche, but it happens to be true. So I think one of the things we need to help the left see is we shouldn't demonize guns. The guns themselves are not evil. They're just a tool. A tool can be used for a good purpose or it can be used for an evil purpose. I think the other thing, you know, for instance, in this school shooting in Florida, you know, it's striking to me that the left is incensed at the Broward County sheriffs for not going into the building to protect these students. Well, what did they want them to do? Well, they wanted them to go in there and use a gun. So even the left is recognizing there's a place for guns to be used to resist violent men and to stop it and to protect innocent lives. And that's what we want to help them see. There's a place for this. I look at every mass shooting that we've had in America, and I would say the one common denominator in every one of those circumstances, there were not too many guns present, there were too few. There weren't enough people that were armed to be able to stop the bad guy. It's another cliche, but it's true. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. If you've got a bad guy with a gun and there's no good guy with a gun, then he can roam through whatever environment he's in, whether it's a school or a library or wherever, and inflict harm and even death at will.
Okay, so that's an excerpt from this upcoming documentary, Beating Guns. into plowshares, which apparently is the theme of the documentary. The thing I'm kicking myself, the one thing I told myself going into the interview, I've got to be sure and tell them about the time in colonial America when you would be breaking the law if you did not pack heat to church. For those of you who don't know about that, I'll explain that on the other side of the break. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
On July 19th, Democrats in Congress announced the formation of a Medicare for All caucus. It is co-chaired by 3 members, U.S. Representatives Pramila Jayapal, Keith Ellison, and Debbie Dingell. Notably, Representative Dingell is the wife of former Congressman John Dingell, Jr., who voted for Medicare in 1965 and was passionate about establishing a national health care system. Democrats are serious about imposing a single-payer system, but how will they expand Medicare to cover all Americans? Medicare is running out of funds, is already rationing care to the elderly, and will be bankrupt in 8 years. So how will that work? Democrats are in dreamland.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki Addison of Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. Family is so important to everything. I mean, think about it. Right after God created Adam, he made family by creating Eve as his wife.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference this summer. We'll have a full slate of experts to help encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family.
Our speakers include Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, and more.
We'll even be there.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference will be Friday and Saturday, August 17th and 18th at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi. Come help us fight back against the enemy's direct attack on marriage and family. That's the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference, put on by Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Glad to have you in the conversation. You know, the thing I forgot to mention is that there was a time in colonial America where you were required by law to be armed in church. And the reason was actually quite simple. They had hostile Native American nations around them all the time. And these Native American tribes began to realize, look, these people all go to church on Sunday, and everybody in the village is in the same place at the same time, and they're not armed. So they began timing their attacks on these villages to coincide with their church services. And so the colonial father said, look, we've got to be able to protect ourselves when we're at worship. So everybody's got to bring their gun to church, and there was a fine if you didn't. You got fined, you'd be breaking the law if you didn't pack heat to church. You know, and I was talking on the break about whether he included the part of the documentary where I talked about the fact that Jesus in Luke 22:36 urged his disciples to buy a gun. If you don't have a gun, if you don't have a sword, sell what you have, sell your cloak, and buy one, because I'm going to be numbered with the transgressors. People are going to think of me as a bad actor. You're going to be identified with me, so you may have some people coming after you that are going to number you with the transgressors because you are identified with me. I'm going to die as a common criminal. I'm going to die as a rebel against the king, and they're going to think of you the same way. So you'd better arm yourselves. And some people have said, well, that doesn't fit, because when Peter used the sword, Jesus immediately stopped him and said, that's enough, no more. Well, the reason for that is very simple. The people that came to arrest Jesus in the garden had the legal authority to do it. They weren't just an irate neighbor or somebody in the community that was going to take the law into their own hands, they had authority from the political government to arrest people. That was their job. They were like the local police. You know, so a cop pulls you over, you pull over, and you do whatever the cop tells you to do. He's got the legal authority to do it. Now, you got a neighbor doesn't like you. He tries to pull you over, tries to run you off the road. You have absolutely no obligation to cooperate with him at all. Doesn't have the authority to do it. So that's why Jesus stopped Peter. Look, Peter, we cooperate even when they're doing bad stuff. We're going to cooperate with those that have the legal authority to enforce the law, even when they are wrong. So anyway, that explains that whole deal. Now, we got some clips on the whole business with Donald Trump and the dossiers and all that kind of thing. I want to read some excerpts, highlight some excerpts from a piece by Andy McCarthy today. This guy's great on legal stuff. I just read virtually everything that he writes. I'm going to take a little bit of time with this. Now, I'll tell you what. Let's why don't we jump into some? Let's just jump into some sound bites.
Cannonball.
Let's
go.
I'm tired of listening to myself talk.
It's hot out there too. People are thinking of the pool terms
I don't know.
right now.
Did we talk about that YouTube video that's gone viral about the kid doing his mom is out there trying to teach the boys how to dive?
No, you didn't. You mentioned it to me.
Well, this is a video. You got to go find it. It's worth finding.
I'll post it on the Facebook Live.
Okay. So it's a mom. They're out by their backyard swimming pool. She's got these young boys. One of them maybe 2, and one of them's 4, or whatever. And she's teaching them to dive. So she models it. She puts her hands out in front of her, and she dives off the edge of the pool and into the pool. Shows them how to do it. So the 4-year-old does it next, and he sort of gets halfway there. You got the business about getting the hands out in front of him and kind of jumping, projecting out into the pool. And then little 2-year-old stands there. Have you found it, Jeff?
Yeah.
Jeff is laughing at it right now. And it'll be on the Facebook page. He just kind of does a face plant into the pool. I mean, he just falls over like he'd been cut down with an axe and just lands right on his face.
It is funny.
But yeah, it is a kick. Cute. And he lived to talk about it too. So Olympics, here we come. Now let's. Jeff is still laughing. Jeff's replaying it.
I'm playing it over and over. It's really funny if you freeze it right when he hits the water.
So you listen to me. I'll be talking about some kind of funeral procession, how somber it was, and you're going to hear all this. This laughing coming over here from Jeff. I'm just teasing.
I'm back to work, boss.
Back to work. Okay. Now let's listen to clip number 1. Talking about the issue of security clearances, and this is a big issue. We talked about this yesterday. And here's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You've got people like John Clapper. You have James Brennan. You have Michael Hayden. You have Susan Rice. You have Andrew McCabe. Now, all these people still have top secret security clearances. You know, and I told you yesterday, and I don't have any idea why. Apparently, it's kind of a courtesy that they extend to people, but you shouldn't be extending it to these people. I mean, James Brennan, or John Brennan rather, he's out there talking about the fact that he wants President Trump to be put to death. He's actually advocating for the execution of President Trump because he's accusing Trump of engaging in treason. That's a crime in the Constitution, and the penalty for that crime is death. It's a capital crime. So you got one of these guys is that they're calling for the execution of the President of the United States, and we're going to trust him with clearance that gives him the legal authority to access our most cherished private information, not on your life. So here's Sarah Sanders talking about that clip 1.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe. The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances. Making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate. And the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
All right, good for you, Sarah, and good for President Trump. You know, and part of the problem here is these guys are monetizing their former security, or their former positions and their current security clearances. They're making money off of that. You know, John Brennan, whatever his first name is, I think it's John Brennan. He's on CNN all the time as a talking head. These other guys, James Clapper, Michael Hayden, they're also talking heads on TV. So they're making money off the fact that they have security clearances. And they are enemies of the president. So the president is looking very hard at revoking the security clearances. Now here is Rand Paul talking to Martha McCallum of Fox News, clip number 2 about this security clearance issue.
John Brennan leaked information that almost cost the life of a double agent. This is 4 years ago now. He should have been fired for that, but he wasn't fired by President Obama because I think he was a partisan. But now he's a talking head on the outside saying that basically President Trump should be executed. That's what we do for treason. And so, yeah, I'm very concerned about him having privileges because of his past history, but I would make it more universal. I don't think that ex-CIA agents of any stripe who are now talking heads should continue to get classified information. I think it's wrong.
And I think Rand Paul is right that that's wrong. You know, I mentioned this letter I got from a friend of the program. He'd been career military, and he had a top secret security clearance for a time. And almost as soon, I mean, it was virtually instantaneous when he retired from the military. I'm not saying it was the day of, but right in the immediate proximity of his retirement from active duty, his top secret security clearance was revoked. So that's what they ought to do with anybody that's had a former security clearance and is no longer working for an intelligence agency, no longer working for the government, no longer working in law enforcement. That top secret security clearance ought to be yanked right now. So I'm hoping there'll be some common sense changes made in the security clearance issue. Now let's look at clip number 3. Again, Rand Paul expanding on this idea that just universally we ought to revoke security clearances from people that are no longer in a position to legally use them.
I would not probably even name names. I would probably have it as a universal policy that when you leave, the only time I can think of a reason why you would want to keep this would be in a transition when you're still briefing people and you're sitting down with the next administration. I would probably just go one step beyond and not let any retired officials go on television that still have classified security clearance.
Now, that's frankly all you'd have to do. These guys love being on TV. These guys love bashing Trump. And if you made a rule that you can't be a talking head on TV with pretty good money, they'll dangle a pretty good chunk of change in front of you. You make a rule that you can't be a talking head on TV if you still have a top secret security clearance. They'll turn those things in so fast it'll make your head ache because they want to get on TV and rake in the big buck. So Rand Paul thinking with his head clearly in place here.
And that seems to really make sense, doesn't it, Brian? I mean, usually, you see all the movies. What happens when a policeman gets in trouble? What's the first thing they take? Is his badge and his gun, right? If you lose a job at some place that requires a swipe card to get in the front door, that's the first thing they take. I mean, why wouldn't they do the same thing here?
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. You can't believe that it's been going on for so long. Now, here is, now we don't really have a time for this next James Clapper clip. I'll kind of set this up a little bit and then we'll listen to it. This is James Clapper's response to, I don't have time. Never mind, forget it. I thought I had time, I don't. But James Clapper's response to President Trump even threatening to take away his security clearance. So we'll take a listen to that. I also want to work through this piece with you by Andy McCarthy because he's written brilliant stuff on this whole Trump-Russia investigation. And I want to explore some of what he says in this column. It's an extensive column up at National Review. He's been added to the Fox News lineup of commentators, and he's terrific. I mean, he really knows his stuff. He's outstanding. In fact, I looked in his book a little bit. Spent some time in his book called Grand Jihad this morning. He wrote that book all about the threat and the danger of Islam. This guy's dialed in. And that statement I found about the goal of the Muslim Brotherhood to eliminate and destroy Western civilization, that's right out of some of the information that's contained in his book, The Grand Jihad. So he's got information I think is really helpful for us to think through this whole dossier thing, the FISA warrant that was granted by the judge. What are the ins and outs of that? We've had questions about that. I think Andy McCarthy answers some of those questions in this column. So we'll get to that when we come back right after this break.
You know, people often ask me, Tim, what's your favorite part of the Holy Land Tour? I've been leading Holy Land Tours for many years now. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, I learned how to lead these Israel tours from my dad, who started doing them in the 60s. And then he taught me in the 80s and 90s. And now my wife Allison and I lead these tours annually to Israel. And we love going because we love seeing people's eyes when they see things such as the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River and the Garden Tomb and the Wailing Wall. See all these things for the first time, and maybe the last time in many folks' lives, because this is a bucket list trip. We're going to be going in March. If you want a brochure sent to your mailbox, give us a call at 800-FAMILIES, 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and we'll send you a brochure. If you want to go to the website, everything's there. twholyland.com, twholyland.com.
Here's Steve Tiber.
8 Days of Hope started after Hurricane Katrina, helping people in Bay St. Louis, Waveland, Mississippi rebuild their homes back in 2005. Since then, this faith-based ministry has gone nationwide, and we've helped out dozens of cities, dozens of areas of the country after hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, or even snowstorms. And now you get a chance to be a difference maker. 8 Days of Hope 16. You can be the hands and feet of Jesus down in Houston from October 13th to October 20th. You can come for as little as 3 days or stay all 8 days. We provide the food and lodging. We're looking for skilled professional and people like me who are less skilled and just want to give back. For more information, go to our website, 8daysofhope.com. Click on the event, 8 Days of Hope 16. Read the FAQs and learn more about how you can make a difference with 8 Days of Hope.
Learn more and sign up to be a part of 8 Days of Hope 16 in Houston, Texas at 8daysofhope.com. That's 8daysofhope.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. You're listening to Ultra 4K radio, more content per cubic inch of air than any other place on your radio dial. And the program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio, and I am your congenial, convivial, and amiable host. Goal to be the hardest working man in Conservative Talk Radio. I'm not saying I am, but that's my goal, and if I don't get there, it will not be for lack of effort. Now, let's play the clip about James Clapper, because he's one of the guys who's going to have his security clearance yanked. This is clip number 4, and here is James Clapper's response. He's a talking head making big bucks because he was a former CIA director, or a director of national intelligence. He was actually John Brennan's boss. Remember, Brennan is Muslim convert. He converted to Islam, and he was in charge of all of our intelligence agencies. I can't believe a stupider thing to do if you care about national security. And I mean that with every fiber of my being. That is a stupid, stupid, stupid thing to do, to put a Muslim in charge of our national security. Anyway, James Clapper, he's reacting to the threat from Donald Trump to pull his security clearance.
For political reasons, this is a kind of a petty way of retribution, I suppose, for speaking out against the president, which I think are, on the part of all of us, are born out of genuine concerns about President Trump.
Sarah Sanders, one of the words she used, I'll just fill you in as you're getting this information, she referred to you guys all as politicizing, and that you've essentially monetized your security clearance by, you along with a number of these other folks on the screen come on TV, paid contributor, with a security clearance to say how you feel about the president. And they don't like it, apparently.
Well, the security clearance has nothing to do with how I or any of us feel about the president. And I don't get clearance briefings. I don't have access to any classified information. It's frankly more of a courtesy that former senior officials in the Intelligence Committee are extended the courtesy of keeping a security clearance. Haven't had occasion to use it. And it has no bearing whatsoever on, my regard or lack thereof for President Trump or what he's doing.
Well, you got to ask yourself the question: why are you complaining then?
Yeah.
What's your beef here? And if you're accusing the president of being petty for taking this away from you, aren't you being just as petty by complaining about it? If it doesn't mean anything, if you can't use it, you're going to have no occasion to use it. It's just a courtesy. Well, how about showing a little bit of courtesy toward Donald Trump and maybe speaking of him with a little bit of respect? So that is James Clapper. Now, this piece by Andrew McCarthy, he's talking about the utter lack of professionalism in procuring this warrant to spy on Carter Page. Remember, that's where this whole thing started. Carter Page was a nobody. I'm not saying that about him personally. He just didn't have any rank or stature or importance. He was of the outer periphery of the Trump campaign. Was not an advisor really, except in a very, very informal and tangential sense to the campaign. But they had to start with somebody. So Carter Page had been in a conference, the same conference where a lot of Trump officials were at, a meeting with people from the Kremlin back in 2013 or something like, we've got our guy. He's met with Russians. We're going to nail him for this, and we're going to spy on him because we can make the case that he has been colluding with the Russians. Now, what the point that Andy McCarthy makes is one that we made all the way along. Andy McCarthy was actually shocked to find out, as the revelation of the details of the FISA warrant were released, of 412 pages, McCarthy was shocked, and he was embarrassed, and he was ashamed of the FBI, where he'd been for 20 years. He was embarrassed that the FBI had used that information from the Steele dossier to get a warrant to spy on anybody, because it was completely unverified. And that's what was revealed in this 412 pages of information. There was no effort made on the part of the FBI to verify any of the information in the document. There's just nothing there that would justify surveillance. So you've got the FBI, and he says, look, this is completely contrary to FBI protocol. We have strict rules that if you're going to go get a warrant on somebody for anything, you can't go to them without information that has been verified. And he said the problem here, Christopher Steele is the source of almost all of this. He said, Christopher Steele, look, he has not been in Russia for 20 years. Christopher Steele hasn't set foot in Russia in 20 years. And all of the information that he passes on is hearsay. And some of it is third and fourth degree hearsay. He's reporting not only on what somebody told him somebody else said, but is reporting on what somebody told him that somebody else was told by somebody else who was told by somebody else that this was. So you're looking at 3-4 generations removed. And if you ever played the telephone game, you know what happens to communications that go through that kind of a rinse and repeat cycle. So that's why McCarthy was just, we played that soundbite the other day, just how embarrassed he was. And he's embarrassed for what the FBI has done. And the FBI apparently lamely made this affirmation that they had reviewed this application for accuracy. But he says the problem here, and he thinks what they're doing is trying to pull a technical con job here by claiming that they had accurately recorded Christopher Steele's complaints. But he said that's not the issue. The issue is not whether his allegations were accurately described, it's whether they were accurate, period. And they were not. So you got multiple hearsay, you got suspect sourcing. In other words, this is just a document with no legal credibility. In other words, this investigation never, ever should have even started in the first place. Now, here is Ron Wyden, clip number 5, and this is how Looney Tune the left is.
It sounds to me like Donald Trump is talking about building an enemies list, and then the question would be, if that's the case, are taxpayer resources going to be used to go after critics?
Senator, do you think that if he goes ahead with this threat to strip these security clearances, an unprecedented action in the United States of America, that would be grounds for impeachment, or does that not go far enough in your view?
I will tell you that if he goes forward with what he's been talking about today, the idea of building an enemies list, and then we'd have the prospect of whether taxpayer funds were being used to deal with critics, I would rule absolutely nothing out if he pursued that strategy.
By not ruling anything out, he's thinking about impeachment there. I would not rule out impeachment if it looked like Donald Trump was going after his enemies by revoking their security clearances. Well, this is just crazy. I mean, they formed an enemy list. It's not Donald Trump that's formed an enemies list here. It's the Brennans and the Clappers and the McCabe's and the Strucks and the Pages. They have formed an enemy list that's got one name on it. They're the ones that fired the first shots in this salvo. So they're the ones with the enemy list. Trump's just trying to defend himself against people that clearly out to get him. And Ron Wyden here, he's a senator talking about the possibility of using impeachment as a tool to punish Trump in return. Now here's Lindsey Graham, clip 6, Senator Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham is pretty knowledgeable on national security issues. He thinks he's more knowledgeable about everything than he actually is, but he does not suffer from a low opinion of himself, let me put it that way. So here's Lindsey Graham talking here with Margaret Brennan. This is on Face the Nation CBS about this FISA warrant.
No, I think the whole FISA warrant process needs to be looked at. The warrant on Carter Page was supported mostly by a dossier that came from Michael Steele, who was being paid by the Democratic Party to do opposition research. And the dossier was collected, I think, from Russian intelligence services. And if you ask the FBI today, how much of the dossier on Trump has been verified? Almost none of it.
But you say mostly, not entirely. Therefore, was the surveillance justified?
No, not at all, in my view. If the dossier is the reason you issued the warrant, it was a bunch of garbage. The dossier has proven to be a bunch of garbage.
And he's right about that. By the way, it wasn't Michael Steele that was paid by the Democratic Party. It was Christopher Steele. Michael Steele's the former head of the Republican National Committee. But anyway, Senator Graham correctly saying, look, this is a bunch of garbage. Let's go to clip number 7. This is Maria Bartiromo talking to the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, about this FISA warrant, clip 7.
But I can very heartily agree with Senator Paul when he says that Democratic operatives related to the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee paid for the creation of this so-called Steele dossier and then turned it over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But what's so unprecedented about this is that the FBI then took it, weaponized it without ever verifying its credibility, and brought it to the FISA court without disclosing the source of that information. That is deeply troubling, and it is a part of the reason why the new FBI director has been hard at work trying to reform this organization whose credibility has been damaged by a few key people. And by the way, those few key people are the same people in both of these investigations. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, the FBI counsel, the chief of staff to the director, the same people in both of these investigations.
All right, so you got the same people, the same posse of bad actors You know, these are just a gang of assassins. These are a gang of political assassins. That's all they are. And their objective is to get Trump. They got an enemies list. It's got one name on it, and they're out to take that guy out. And anybody that gets within proximity, take that guy or those people out as well. You know, and the part of what Andy McCarthy is complaining about is that, look, this had an official FBI stamp on it as if all this information had been verified. So it's presented to the FISA court as intelligence. It's presented as verified intelligence. They never told the people it was just a campaign document, that Hillary Clinton paid for it. They never told the FISA judge that information. Focal Point American Family Radio. We'll be right back with your calls. Stay with us. Be right back.
Washington Watch advances a culture where human life is valued and religious liberty thrives.
Hello, this is Tony Perkins, host of Washington Watch, right here on the American Family Radio Network, inviting you to join us each weekend for the weekend edition of Washington Watch for the latest from our nation's capital on what is happening as it pertains to faith, family, and freedom. You'll hear from policymakers, congressional leaders, and others each day, 4 p.m. Central Time. Be there.
Exposing Washington reveals the deception that plagues our nation's capital.
The mainstream media refuses to tell the truth of what's really happening.
Exposing Washington brings clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C.
The American people must stay informed on what our government is doing.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman brings you the inside scoop of what's happening at our nation's capital.
We must take our country back.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a nonprofit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to the last segment of today's edition of Focal Point American Family Radio. Number to call, if you'd like to jump in on our conversation, is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 is the number to call. You're welcome to talk about either the Muslim issue or this FBI investigation that's targeting Trump. Talk about either one of those two. I want to take comments and questions on those two things, the security clearances issues and all that kind of stuff. So if you can confine your comments to those two topics, that will be great. Now, let's grab a couple of clips before we go directly to the phones. Let's go to clip 8. This is the second clip of Bob Goodlatte, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, talking with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday.
In one instance, doing everything possible to avoid indicting Hillary Clinton, including allowing her chief aides to be in the room with her when she was interviewed by the FBI, creating a memo exonerating her before most of the witnesses, including Secretary Clinton, had been interviewed. Not putting this before a grand jury, even though they had impaneled the grand jury in that investigation. They didn't let the grand jury determine whether she should be indicted. And then changing the language in the memo from gross negligence to extreme carelessness. Gross negligence very closely tracks a statute. Extreme carelessness is not a meaningful phrase, all to avoid indicting her.
Yeah.
That is shocking.
You know, and this is amazing. I didn't realize that there was a grand jury that had been convened during that time period and that Hillary Clinton should have had to appear before this grand jury, and she didn't. They kept her from that grand jury. That's why Hillary Clinton was never indicted. They kept her away from the grand jury. She never had to appear before the grand jury. So she was never in danger of being indicted because the people that could return an indictment never heard any of her testimony. And all kinds of irregularities, had her aides in the room with her. They were allowed to claim that they were her counsel, claim attorney-client privilege, which they could not do. Just absurd. And the change, the change in language from gross negligence to extreme carelessness. Gross negligence is a crime. You change it to extreme carelessness, you just gave her a get-out-of-jail-free card. So that more stuff that's pretty tawdry going on there with the FBI. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's begin with Essence in Temple, Texas. Essence, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, permission to come aboard, sir.
Permission granted, sailor or sailorette, whatever they call them in the Navy these days.
Okay. I'm going to say all this quick because I got to get back to work. I'm tying socialism to Islam. The wrong people in different states would usher in Sharia, where socialist health care would be given to Muslims and not everyone. Churches would start collapsing, especially those traipsing away from Scripture that offend sinners.
Essence, we're just about losing you. You may be on a cell phone. You may have to shift to a little different place. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. Finish your thought. We got you 5 by 5 now.
Okay, good. I think that Muslims would get the health care for the socialist stuff, and churches would start collapsing, especially those traipsing away from Scripture that offend sinners. Businesses would close, women pushed out of workplaces, privileges to only some folks to drive, people forced out of nice homes, and more gun grabs. And I think socialism is prepping America for the open borders, one world religion of the Antichrist. And we already see the media being directed by Satan with the untruths that they tell the masses daily, and the small children in schools being trained and groomed for sexual deviancy and following the Antichrist religion. It's imperative more than ever to come to Christ now before Bibles are banned and burned. If Sharia takes a hold, all those who are sexually confused will become a target, along with Christians and Jews. Not only politicians will be harassed and attacked like they are now, the rest of us will be approached thanks to people like Mad Maxine. And I have a question. People calling for the murder of our president, why are they not in prison? And I thought refugees can't be voted into government positions. And all those people President Trump is removing from that security clearance, I'm still thinking Obama's connected to that. He might have to get off of there, too.
Yeah. All right,
Thank
Essence.
you, sir. Have a blessed day.
All right, you too, Essence. Thank you for taking a break from work to talk to us. And I just want to emphasize one thing that Essence said. The only weapon that Satan has is the lie. That's why I call it the talking snake media, because every lie, Jesus said that Satan is a liar and he is the father of lies. He's the father of every lie that circulates. He's behind it, prompting, negotiating, put it in people's minds, whatever. And that's the only weapon that he's got, is to lie. That's the only way he got any kind of control over Eve. He had to lie to her, convince her to believe the lie and act on it, and then he had her. So that's why he's that's his only tool. In essence, is right too about the people that would be targeted under Sharia law, and they would be homosexuals. Homosexuals have protection in a Christian culture because we want to give them a second chance to come to faith in Christ and leave that lifestyle before they're doomed to an eternity apart from God. We don't want that for anybody. And so we want to help them. We want to give them access to reparative therapy, conversion therapy, whatever you want to call it. That's what we want to do. What Muslims want to do is throw them off the nearest roof. And that's what would happen under Sharia law. All right, let's go to Fred in Kettle, Mississippi. Fred, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, Brian. I know you're out of time, but this is why Brennan and Clapper and all these other people are crying they want to keep their security clearance. They keep saying it's a courtesy and they're not using it, but this is the deal. They still got their phony cronies in the government are feeding them top security information, and being they have a top security, nobody can be charged with a crime. But what they're doing, these friends of theirs that's still in the government, is feeding them these top secrets to use against Trump, and that way Clapper and Brennan and all of them, they're not logging on to be traced to them. But if they ever get caught, they can both sides say both have top security, can't do nothing. So that's why they don't want to give them up. Their cronies are feeding them stuff to use against Trump.
All right, Fred, that is a brilliant observation. That's a brilliant observation. That had occurred to me yesterday, and I just didn't jot it down, and Fred has reminded us of that. One of the benefits of maintaining their security clearances, if they have friends that are likewise trying to undermine the Trump administration, their friends can share with them that top security information. And they're not going to get in trouble for talking about disclosing top secret information because they're disclosing it to somebody that has the same clearance level that they do. And then these guys can turn around and leak that information to the media. So that's part of it. It's just kind of an incestuous circle that's just really sort of gross and tawdry. All right, let's go to Mary in Carbondale, Kansas. Mary, welcome in Carbondale, Kansas. What's on your mind?
Well, the people that are running for the offices, the Muslims, the 90 that you talk about,
yes,
don't they have to prove that they're an American citizen or they have a birth certificate saying they were born here? And also, seems like they would have to, since we're having so much trouble with that, seems like they would have to have a clearance showing they have no ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. And then we have like a governor in New York letting people out of jail so they don't have to be deported. And we have Congress people inciting riots and everything. And all of these people are getting by with all this. I just pray that the people that are decent will stand behind President Trump and try to weed this out, because I know the battle's going to be great to the end of time, but we can't sit back and let it just come quicker. And the only other people that's going to be happy about your program get cut in half would be the left-wing social homosexuals. So the rest of us don't like the idea of you leaving, but I hope your column's longer and you can say more that way, and God bless you, and I'll hang up and let you talk. Bye-bye.
Okay, Mary, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I think all a Muslim would need to do to be eligible to run for office, well, not even in some places. You don't have to be a citizen in some places. I mean, San Francisco, they're letting illegal aliens vote. So at some point, you've got to let them run for office. And we know of cases where candidates have been illegal and have found a way to maneuver around the system and run for office. So they probably, if they're a citizen of the United States, they would be eligible not only to vote, but also to run for office. So without some kind of a religious testing in place, I'm afraid we're going to get them. All right, let's go to Daniel in Ottawa, Kansas. Daniel, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yeah, it's sort of like I'd like to give you some information about yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Or like Trivia Friday, making you smarter.
Yeah.
That poppycock.
Yeah.
Is a popcorn, a caramel popcorn with peanuts in it, and you can get it at Walmart and some of these stores. You ought to try it. It's better than Cracker Jack. Yeah, I mean, it's good. So when you use the word poppycock, you better make sure it's something real good,
Okay, Daniel. All right, so Walmart. Now, I'm going to get on Walmart here. I think they purloined that from Focal Point. We've been talking about poppycock.
You should have copyrighted.
Well, yeah, I know. Now they use it and they're slapping it on caramel popcorn. All right, Daniel, appreciate the clarification. Let's go to Teresa in Ohio. Last call of the day. Teresa, I got about 30 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to let you know I did some research the other day on Rod Rosenstein.
Yes.
And his wife, her name, I believe, is Lisa Barsomia. She actually defended Hillary Clinton, she defended James Comey, and she defended Barack Obama about 45 times.
Yeah.
So there might be a link
Yeah.
as to why all this is happening.
Well, yeah, they're hip deep. That's a good call, Teresa. Great information. Thanks for passing that along. And I've read some of that before, so I know what Teresa's saying is right on the money. So they're hip deep in the establishment, hip deep in the swamp. By the way, just got a note from the executive producer that she ate poppycock as a kid. Huh. So, Daniel, you've been verified in our increased knowledge.
And there goes our copyright.
That's for today. See you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product you'd normally buy anyway. Choose